right. Our last question is from David in the UK, and he wants to know if anything unclean gets destroyed in sacred space, how come Satan is safe in God's presence in Job?
Well, I'm not quite sure where the question is coming from, because I don't really know of anything unclean getting destroyed in sacred space. Maybe the questioner's thinking of the Nadav and Avihu episode, Leviticus 10, the strange fire kind of thing. Because if something was defiled, in other words, made impure, and was therefore ineligible for sacred space, the typical procedure in Leviticus wasn't that God just sends a lightning bolt down and destroys it or destroys the person. There's a procedure to go through decontamination. So I'm not quite sure about the first part of the question, if anything unclean gets destroyed in sacred space. I'm not quite sure what he's talking about there. If it is Leviticus 10, Nadav and Avihu, again, that has a context, so I'd recommend going back to the Leviticus series and looking for the episode on Leviticus 10 and listening to that. But let's just go to the second part of the question. How come Satan is safe in God's presence in Job? I think a lot of listeners could probably anticipate what I'm going to say here. The Satan in Job 1 and 2 is not the devil. Okay, we don't have a problem here with the devil, capital S, Satan, being safe in God's presence in Job 1 and 2, because that isn't the devil. For a video on this and the results of text searching on this, go up to drmsh.com. And if you type in the search engine there, Satan, and maybe the word Job, you're going to find a couple posts that relate to this issue. Just to summarize what you'll see there for the sake of listeners. The reason I say this isn't the devil in Job 1 and 2 is because in every instance in Job, and also in Zechariah 3, the word Satan is prefixed by the Hebrew definite article. Definite article is the word the. By rule of Hebrew grammar, and in the video you'll see me flip out to a Hebrew grammar so that you know Mike's not just making this up. It's a Hebrew reference grammar, and anybody who's gone really past first year in Hebrew knows this. But by rule of Hebrew grammar, Hebrew, like English, does not prefix the word the, does not prefix a definite article to proper personal names. It never happens. So in English, the English example is, I'm not the Mike. Okay, Trey is not the Trey. We're just Mike and Trey. We don't use, because English, it sounds idiotic because this is the way English grammar works. English does not use a definite article before a proper personal name. Hebrew is exactly the same. And so this is a rule of Hebrew grammar. What that means is Satan in Job 1 and 2 is not a proper personal name. It's not capital S Satan. Even though English texts translate it that way, they present the term that way. And frankly, let's just be honest, they do that because it would freak people out to not do it. People are so used to reading it in older translations, like the King James or whatever. They're so used to hearing about the devil, capital S Satan in Job 1 and 2, that if you don't represent it that way, nobody's going to buy your English translation and they'll think you're a heretic. It's just a concession. Now in the ESV, and the ESV is not the only one, but if you go to ESV and you go up to Job 1, like in verse 6, the first time you have the term mentioned, there'll be a footnote. And the footnote, I'll just read it to you, says Hebrew, the accuser, or the adversary. So throughout chapters 1 and 2. So it ought to be translated, now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and the accuser also came among them. In other words, it strips out the proper personal name. It's a title. It's an office. It's a person, a being, an entity in the divine council that gets a little uppity, and we know the rest of the story, about the confrontation there, the conflict between God and Hasatan, the Satan, the adversary. But this is not the devil of Genesis 3, Garden of Eden, or the devil of the New Testament. And so the question has to be answered that way. And so Satan isn't safe in God's presence in Job because it's not Satan. It's not capital S Satan. It's not the devil. Now, if you have Unseen Realm, I'd recommend that you read the part of the book where I discuss Luke 10:18. I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. I think, again, that is probably more pertinent to the kinds of things you might be wondering about by virtue of this question. But as far as Job 1 and 2 goes, this isn't the devil. And so there's no issue of the devil being safe in God's presence.